going to talk about traditional glazing technique and glazing medium, why you would use a glazing medium instead of, say, a gloss medium, which I talked about in my other video. So a glazing medium is something specifically formulated for this purpose. Now let's go back a little bit in history. I'm going to use this to cover this up. So we're going to look at historical painting technique here. So it used to be that they would start the paintings with brown and white. Okay, so the underlayers were done not in color. That actually came in with the Impressionists. They would just take the paint and put it straight on the white canvas and make these bright, vibrant things. But traditional technique up to that point had been always to do an underpainting and layer color on top. And that is where you would get the color. So anyone who's been around long enough to remember the days before color photography may have in their family photo collection a portrait of someone that was done in black and white, and they tinted it, you know, and they add a little color to the cheeks, make it look a little more alive. It's kind of the same concept. It's like tinting a photograph in some ways. So you have this was done in burnt umber and white, and then the colors were added with a glazing medium. So that is a traditional way to do this. Now you can do that, or you can just have fun layering colors on top, any which way you choose. So let me show you how the glazing medium works. We're going to squeeze some out here.
So it's shiny, is it, when it dries?
Yeah, it dries pretty shiny because it's more like oil paint. The oil paint glazes have a high sheen to them, so it dries like that. So I'm going to pick, how about I use this blue because I think it'll show up well. I put more color than I'm going to need for the glazing. And we're going to do it on this little canvas. And I'll actually write glazing medium on here, so we have something to layer on top of.
Okay, your sample fell on top of the wet paint.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll put that there before it dries. All right, so when you mix a glazing medium, you usually just use a very small amount of color, okay? So I always start with less because you can't take the color out, can you? So I even have a name for it. I call it a twitch of color. It's just the tiniest little amount on the back of the knife, and then I'm gonna mix it in really well with a color. The reason you do this with a knife and not a brush is, number one, you won't be pushing a lot of medium up into the ferrule of the brush and kind of destroying the brush. And number two is, you see the streakiness that you get? You need to use a knife to really blend it thoroughly, and it takes a little while, so enjoy yourself, be patient with it. I think this is the reason a lot of us love paint, because it's just fun to move around color. It's just very sensual experience playing with color and mediums. The other thing too, if you mix an acrylic, sorry about that, an acrylic medium with a brush, you can get a frothiness to it and bubbles that you might not want to get. It's sort of like using a whisk to beat some egg whites or something. So you don't want that frothiness, you want to keep it more fluid. What do you think? Is it getting mixed? Do you detect any streaks? I do. So I'm going to keep mixing.
Just see the windows shining on it.
It's easier to see from my vantage point because I'm standing straight up. Oh, there was a big blob of it. See, I'm actually going to wipe that off just so that I don't have to keep mixing. This is, they talk about watching paint dry. This is probably almost as boring for an observer. Watching someone mix paint.
You can't take your twitch and then add the medium to it over on the side. That way you can add more and more and more medium.
Well, I just wanted to make a good amount to start with.
But you could do it then.
Yeah, you can do it any way you like. Now, when I glaze, I want a softer brush. And these ones, whoops. Okay, this one's in pretty decent shape. Okay, So this is a glazing brush. It's designed for glazing. It's by Winsor Newton. It's called the Monarch glazing brush, and it's a faux, let's call it faux, it sounds better, faux badger hair.
Wow.
This is an investment brush. You know, you would buy this and have it for a while, but if you do a lot of glazing, it might be worth it. It also works well for varnishing. Now here's a more affordable brush. It's a Scepter Gold, and it's actually for watercolors, but it's really soft. So what you want to do is just feel, if you're buying a brush or looking in your collection of brushes, you want to feel the bristles are so soft that you can't discern separate bristles passing across your hand or your wrist or wherever. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
So a lot of people make the mistake of brushing, you know, glazing with whatever brush they have, like this stiff brush has a lot of texture. It's great for getting texture and brush strokes to show, but the traditional glazing, and you don't have to be traditional. No one said you had to be traditional, so you get to pick. But I was trained as an oil painter, and I learned this traditional technique. I don't use it now, but I want you to know, just in case you're interested in trying to get that. Traditional glazing technique would be a very smooth, glassy kind of a look to the glaze, not a textural look. So I'm going to, now this is the Michelle method. Every artist will have a different glazing method. I like to make a really juicy, thick glaze. So it's almost like you load up your brush like a caramel apple. And I will just layer it over here like so and get as much as I can off of that brush. And then I'm going to watch it level itself out. So this is also a watching paint dry situation. So if you can get a good look at that, and if you need to, you can stand up and come over. The brush strokes that were there are slowly melting away. Can you tell?
Yeah.
And it gets smoother and smoother and smoother. And that's the difference between glazing medium and gloss medium. Gloss medium, I did this sample back in the day when they didn't have a glazing medium, and I hated it. I had been trained, like I said, I've been painting with oils for 15 years. Then I had some health things. I had to switch to the acrylics because I couldn't be around the turpentine and any other type of solvent any longer. So I started doing my paintings with acrylics, and I couldn't stand the glazing, the texture. See that brush stroke? I hated it. I couldn't get it to go smooth, or it would lift because I'd try and brush it on too soon. It drove me crazy. This glazing medium really made me a happy person, a happy painter, because I could get more of an oil paint style glaze, and that was how I glazed as an oil painter. Now other people, I've seen other people, they do really subtle, they got hardly anything on the brush, and they'll just do this very soft like that. So that's another way. You don't have to have it really thick. You can use just a little tiny haze, and in that case I might use more color, because you don't see much there. But I like to build up layer upon layer, so this is very thick, clear layer. Think of stained glass, how gorgeous that is when you have light shining through color. It's just lovely to behold. And I'm trying to get that same effect in a painting. I'm trying to get the light rays to bounce through these transparent layers of color, bounce off the background, and glow, make the painting feel like it's glowing. So that's why I do a lot of layers of glaze, and I make them very juicy and thick and so forth. You get to pick. You can do it any which way you want. And if you don't have glazing medium, you can use the gloss medium, and maybe those textures in the brushstroke are part of the expression in your painting. Maybe you want to show that. Maybe you want to, you know, make swirls and stuff with a brushstroke and have this kind of rhythm and dynamic feel to your glaze. You get to choose. It's a modern world. Like, you can paint how you like. There's no master standing over you saying you must paint like me. You get to pick. So just have fun with it and enjoy it. And I just think you'll find it's a really satisfying technique. If we just look at this chart, and you can kind of understand a little bit more of the color theory of it. So this is the chart that we make in my glazing workshops. So we will all paint the opaque layer in these vertical stripes. So we have a titanium white, we have a neutral gray 5, an ivory black, ultramarine blue, chromium oxide green, cadmium yellow medium hue, a raw sienna, and a cadmium red medium. Those are painted first. Then we mix up the glaze like so, and we paint stripes of it over top. So here, let's just look at the phthalo blue. One thing that's really subtle and beautiful that I do a lot in my painting is painting analogous colors. So colors in the same family, blues over blues, purples over blues, greens over blues, blues over greens, and so forth. See the subtle variation you get there? It's not the same flat blue that comes out of the tube. You get this depth and you get this richness. Same thing with a green. I take this green and I layer it over a chromium oxide green, which is perfectly fine color, but not a ton of personality there. And then I put this layer of the phthalo blue, and suddenly it has this nuance, and it reminds us of what? The ocean, or a gauzy dress, you know, satin silk dress thing or whatever. Here is color mixing. So we have blue over the yellow. Boom, we made a green. Okay? So you don't always have to mix the colors on the palette, you can layer them. So just glazing, just have fun with it. It's just another sort of little tool, painter's tool to have in your kit. It's fun, satisfying, pretty, beautiful. So enjoy it. It is